Welcome. You're listening to My Magical Horse, the podcast, where we are getting curious about animal communication. I am your host, Jordan Banks, and if you are desiring a more magical connection with your own horse, you are in the right place. Join us as we rediscover our sense of wonder, experience the joy, and feel the magic that horses can and do bring to our lives each and every day. We are so excited to have you here. Thank you for spending your time with us. Now let's get started. Welcome back. Today we are talking with Amber Lydic. Amber is a horse trainer who began pursuing other modalities and certifications beyond horse training to try and find a missing link that she noticed both she and her clients needed in order to deepen their relationships on their horsemanship journey. That included not only becoming a John Lyons certified trainer, but she also worked as an equine specialist for EAGALA, which is an equine assisted therapy program. She became a Tony Robbins certified life coach and even got certified in Theta healing and Somatic breathwork. Today, Amber combines all of these things that she's learned in her own unique way, helping people reconnect back to themselves so that they can then connect more deeply with their horses and others through her business, the Art of Equine Alchemy. Welcome, Amber. I'm so excited to have you here today.
I'm so excited to be here.
So, do you want to give a little summary about what you do or how you feel like you show up in the horse world? And I know that this podcast has had a focus on animal communication, but also on creating a more magical connection with your horse. And we'll dive into deeper details, but what's an overview of what you do and how you help humans with their their relationship with their horse?
I think I do it in a variety of ways, just depending on what the person or group of people need in front of me. But I do know that it feels like because I was a person who was very disconnected from myself and people for the majority of my life, that it was the one piece within my horsemanship that was missing. And even if you're talking about animal communication, the connection and the receiving and the giving and the whole piece where everything needs to come together for you to be able to have that communication, it's all intertwined. And your belief systems that you have about yourself, what you can and can't do, what's real, what's not, what your horses are saying, what they're not saying, it's all tied up into the belief systems that we hold within ourselves. And that was just the piece that I had to go through a lot of stuff to learn. So the reason I got so many different random certifications was because I was sort of searching for the formula to fix it, and I didn't find that any one thing fixed it. Like, I want to fix the thing. And so it's just a collection of all of those things through meditation, through shadow work, through group stuff, whether it's like the podcast or Facebook groups or online stuff or in-person stuff. It feels like anything that we can do to even give people a taste of what it is to be safe connecting with themselves or people, that plants the seed typically, and it allows the horses then to be able to deliver the messages and the lessons that they came here to do that with the people, because I find most people are blocked in that way, and that is because that's how I was. So if you can unclog that part, that one piece, then everything sort of starts to flow. And you know all of the programs that I have, no matter what they look like, are all centered in that like connection back to self. So
I that's actually kind of how I found you, also because I you were putting stuff out on Instagram, and I remember you were looking for other professionals that were kind of sharing your philosophies, and I was just following you. I was like, okay, I'm totally on board with this, but I'm just gonna hover here in the background and listen and see where this goes. But I also was really relating to a lot of what you were saying because I've been training horses for a long time and teaching a lot of students with their horses and kind of, yeah, hitting a roadblock sometimes when I was feeling like I wasn't able to help the human. Like I could see that what was happening wasn't an issue with the horse. It was something that was happening with the human. and I didn't feel like I had the tools necessarily to help the human through those things. So when I found you, my interest kind of piqued because I was like, okay, you do have these different certifications and some things that I wasn't familiar with. Um, and I wanted to see what I could learn from you that then I could help my own students, so that they could have this better connection with their horse. Do you feel like animal communication in and of itself helped lead you to this path at all, or do you feel like that's something that came later?
I feel like people take for granted their ability to communicate. Um, I feel like because we have people that are so good at it and do it for a living, and you look at them and you're like, oh, there's this, this thing that they have that we don't have. And I know Shaylee says it a lot, and that's why she does what she does as far as teaching her courses, is because we all have the ability to communicate, and most of the time we are communicating. It's whether or not we want to hone in on those skills and be disciplined about making it better, or work on the stuff that would block you from believing that you're actually doing it. So I feel like inherently, just from a young age, because I wasn't comfortable connecting with people, that I spent most of my time with animals. Spent a lot of time in the backyard with the dogs and the chickens. And I felt like in my own experience, it was like, yeah, having these conversations with animals was just, it didn't feel abnormal. No one told me it wasn't normal. No one, it was like you just knew. And it wasn't until you get older and you start to, especially now with social media and everything like that, you start to go, oh, wait a minute, maybe I wasn't, or maybe I just thought I was, maybe I was just crazy.
Mhm.
Maybe I was imagining it, and I think it is something that everyone has the ability to do. And most of the time we're doing it, but we don't know, or we don't believe that we are. So I guess the answer is yes, it was early on. And I believe somewhere in the middle, I started to be more disconnected from myself, just from life experiences, therefore being less connected to my horses. And then all of a sudden, a lot of beliefs started to creep in. And it was like, no, like I'm hearing voices in my head. Does that mean I'm crazy? Like, or is that like actually me receiving, things intuitively, how I receive them? So I think the answer is it started out as just a way of being. I got older. I collected more experiences that could create those limiting beliefs. And then, as then I worked through that stuff on my journey, then now I'm realizing, oh yeah, um, I can gauge it by how much I text Shaylee and ask her to talk to my animals, because I don't do that anymore.
Okay. So
That
yeah,
has been my gauge.
I
I
was
don't need to
gonna
reach out to
add
her anymore.
I was gonna add in that, yeah, so for people who don't know, so Shaylee was the guest on our last episode, and Amber and Shaylee actually have a podcast together, Tea Time with Shaylee and Amber. And was that your idea or was that her idea, or how'd you guys come up with the idea for that podcast?
I think that I know when it happened is I had a podcast a long time ago. It was called Mirror in the Stall. And I had interviewed Tara, and then she led me to Celeste, and Celeste led me to Shaylee. And we had that conversation. That's where we met, actually, on my podcast.
Mm.
And I had done a master class and had her on as a guest. And in that call, my Wi-Fi went down and she had to keep going for me in my class. And when I finally got to log back on, we had a conversation after, and it was sort of at a time in her life where she wasn't doing this stuff, like, she Celeste basically had to force her onto my podcast. And so after that, I loved it because she was like, oh my gosh, like that was so easy. Normally that would have made me so nervous. And then we started just growing a connection between the two of us, and we'd have conversations. And the conversation that we had were just like, we should re-recorded that, because that was like kind of wild, like that we just figured all this stuff out. And so out of that, it was just born. It was like, well, let's just start recording him and see what happens. We'll just throw one out. Um, and our agreement has always been, each year we reevaluate if we're still having fun. And if we're not having fun, we're not going to do it anymore. And that has been, we're coming up on 2 years now, and it's just gets more fun. So, so I think
Wow.
that was sort of just how it happened. It was like, our conversations are crazy. We should record them.
Yeah, I love listening to your guys' podcast, actually. It's really fun. And Yeah, I actually the mirror in the stall masterclass, I did sign up for that. Like I'm I'm a manifesting generator, so I have not actually finished the class. I've done like half of it. But then you also kind of started going on and developing all these other things, and then you were the mastermind behind the Elements of Connection, and now you had the Art of Equine Alchemy event, and also I know you had that retreat down at the Salt River. I didn't go to that one. And then you had the other one, Remember, at your
Hmm.
place this year. But I guess talk a little bit about how your focus has shifted from being a horse trainer and then now you're delving more into these type of events that are helping really more well your focus is really more on the people now than it was on the horses. But maybe just talk a little bit about how that evolved.
Yeah, I feel like the focus now is really helping the people so that the horses can help the people. Because I do think that there are these soul contracts that, that we choose before we come, whether it's with other beings or other people. And I feel like a lot of the messages get blocked or the lessons get blocked, which is the communication from the horses to the people. And so I feel like if I can unclog the humans and put them more into a receiving mode, then that shifts the relationship in general and in turn ends up helping the horse. um
Mhm.
the events feel like collaborating to me. As soon as I started my very first podcast, I knew that I loved supporting other trainers. I love supporting other professionals in the industry, and I'm not sure why. It feels really good for me to do that. And I know because when I go to do clinics on my own, I'm always like, oh, you know who would be perfect here? You know who you need to work with, and I'm always recommending all these people that I have, all of these resources and people that I know. And I was like, I wish that everyone could just be in one place. Like, why am I having to like share links and, names at clinics and I wanted it to be more just more a variety of things that can happen at one time. And it's hard to get people. It's not hard to get people. It is more challenging to get people in person now because there's so much online access. But I also feel the potency of having people in person is so much more impactful. And so to be able to create events where you have multiple professionals in one place and you're bringing in horse owners and body workers and trainers and all of these different types of people to have this experience, it feels like my thing is impact. I want to have the biggest impact that I can possibly have. And being a horse trainer is amazing, but being able to support other horse trainers, that it feels like there are more of them than what I am doing. There are more professionals that are specific than what I'm doing. And I feel like what I do can help all of those individual professionals, which feels more impactful for me. So having these events was like, how can we create these experiences where people walk away and they are very different? Like I didn't want people to go and watch, and take notes and be like, yep, that was really cool. I saw some cool stuff. I learned some cool things. I've got these notes. It was like I wanted them to walk away, but actually completely different. So that when they went back out into their real life, every person that they met could have a seed planted. And that felt like how much quicker that could expand. And I think that's why I love collaborating. It took a minute because I feel like when you collaborate, a lot of stuff will come up. Like your not enoughness comes up. Is there going to be comparison? Are you going to get into like, is this competition? Does it feel, I think that's why a lot of people don't collaborate because we're not really in a culture that so social media again, where it can be amazing, but it can also create a lot of comparison and separation. And I felt like every person that I have in my life that are doing these amazing things, nobody is in that space. And if they are, it's waves of it and they work through it and they're honest about it. And I wanted people to know that there were people out there, especially I think women together, um, in the industry, that you don't have to compete. You don't have to know everything. You can be in a place where you're really good at what you do and also not know all the things. And it's not wrong or doesn't make you look less than to reach out and say, I can't do this part, or I don't know how to do this part, or I definitely can't do this part as good as you. So why don't you come do it with me? And I think that to be an example of that is also how you can become pretty impactful within this space, because when you do that, it's like everything that you do grows. And I think that alone, I think Shaylee and I really focus on the journey part and being honest about it. And even what we're talking about doing today, we realize that there are a lot of limiting beliefs within the partnership, about our business and our growth and what we want to do, where individually, we know what our stuff is, but like as a partnership. So we're going to talk today and work on our limiting beliefs as a partnership. And it's like, so being really authentic about the journey and going, you don't have to have everything figured out to go do big things, and just because things are hard doesn't mean they're not the right thing to do. And wanting to be really real about my journey in that way so that more people go out and go, I'm gonna go do something crazy and I don't know if it's gonna work or not, but fuck it. And so I think that's why we are doing all the things that we're doing. I don't even remember the question you asked me or why I went on that
Oh,
tangent.
it's okay. I
Did I answer
I guess
it?
I'm wondering if you could maybe explain to people a little bit of how you ended up shifting from just being a horse trainer. Like, what
Mm.
type of event happened in your life to make you dive in and do the personal work so that to kind of get you in the place to where now you can help guide other people into it as well.
Yeah, I think it's because I had my identity wrapped up in what a good horse trainer I was. I was pretty cocky in the beginning, especially right out of school, because I had always had horses in my life. I was always like the sticky rider that the trainers put on the horses, and you start to feel like, oh, I'm really good at this. And when you're growing up, you're looking for confirmation that you're good at something, that you're accepted, and I felt like that was my thing. I was really good. I could go out, and ride hard horses and stay on them and make them look good. And so when I got out of school, I had a lot of trainers sending their clients to me because I was doing stuff that they weren't doing. And I wasn't a threat because I wasn't doing dressage or I wasn't a cow horse trainer. I wasn't anything specific. I was like the cowboy girl that could take their horses back to the foundation, unwind that stuff, and then give them back. And then they got to go do all the things that they wanted to do. Um, Through that process was great because I learned a lot about each discipline. I worked with those trainers to learn specifically what they wanted, and it felt great. But I always knew that I was handing horses back to put them in the same situation that they just came from. So I was like, well, this is great. I'm really busy. I feel good, as far as my confidence goes. Like I'm doing these good things and people are telling me how good I am. And also simultaneously knowing that, the horse is most likely going to come back to me in a few months when all the same problems reoccur. But I couldn't put my finger on what it was. I just liked to blame the people, because I didn't really like people per se back then. I was pretty judgmental and kind of, um, I don't know. It just, that's kind of where I stayed. It was like, oh, I love people more than, or I love horses more than people. And the people are messing these horses up. These poor horses. Don't worry, come here, I'll fix you and give you back. And so my identity was very tied into being a good horse trainer. I was the trainer at the police department for the mounted unit. So that felt really significant. And I got to go do all those things. And I was important because, I got to go right. It was just all these things compiled of my identity was so tied into it. And when I bought this facility that I had literally manifested because I would cut class in college and we would park in front of different barns and we would talk about what we would do different at those barns. And that was actually a barn that I sat in front of for several times. And when I got the opportunity to buy it, it was at the same time that I got married. I had just had my youngest, and my training business was great. We refurbished this broken down barn and it was successful. I had 3 trainers, I had 80 horses. Like life was good. I was married to someone that was also in the industry who was very talented at what I just felt like this is it. Like I am doing the things. Look at me go. And then that fell apart hard and fast. And it within the marriage falling apart, the business had to fall apart. My identity as I am a good wife, I'm a good mom, I'm running these businesses, everything's successful, all started to crumble. And at the time I had 2 young, well, I still have them. And what I really always wanted to do was be a cow horse trainer. If I wasn't going to be a cow horse trainer, I wanted to go show. I showed in cutting, but that wasn't it for me. I really wanted to do cow horse. So I'd finally had 2 horses that were bred to do that, and they were very talented. And so I shifted through all the hard stuff. I shifted my focus onto them. Like, I'm just going to train harder. I'm going to go to more clinics. I'm going to ride with my trainer, and I'm going to feel good there because everything else sucks. I simultaneously was drinking a lot and like I'm barely scraping by. And that's when my horses sort of pulled the rug out from under me, I will say. They were like, nope, it's time. It's time for you to get your shit together. And the connection with me and them, everything really started to fall apart. They weren't working as good. I couldn't get anything done on them that I was being able to do before. So then all of a sudden, my identity as a horse trainer, being a good horse trainer, then fell apart. And so then I was like, well, I have nothing now. I am worthless. That was the one thing that I was holding on to. Everything else is terrible. And so everything really had to fall apart in every way for me to get to the point where I was like, something different has to happen. And it was just deep disconnection from everything, from everyone in my life, from myself, from everything. And so when I sold the business, we sold the property, we moved on to where I am now. And I was able to take like a couple months off just because I had, well, able to, I had to, because my body shut down. I ended up with a really rare autoimmune disease that was said that like less than 1% of people get. And I was like, fantastic. Well, that's great. But that is what we talk about, right? Like, everything will fall apart if you don't take the guidance there, then your body will do that for you. And that's what happened to me. So I think that's why I have the ability to speak to all of it, because I went through all of the things. Um, the autoimmune thing was I couldn't put anything in my body without feeling overwhelmingly nauseous, like to the point where I would have to lay down, but I would never actually get sick. I couldn't even drink water. So I would have to work horses as much as I could, then come in because I would still be hungry. I would still be thirsty. Midway after I was done, I would drink and eat, and then I would have to lay on the couch for hours until I had to pick up my son from school. And what came from that was there was a lot of invasive stuff that they wanted to do, and all these procedures and all these tests. And I ended up going to a Tony Robbins event in 2018. It was UPW. It's the one where you walk on fire. I had never had any experience with any self-development. Like, I think my parents in high school sent me to some like whatever was the trendy self-development thing back in the day in high school. I can't remember what it's called, but I think it's pretty well known. Yeah, it was the only taste of it that I had had. So when I went there, and like the first thing you're doing is talking about how you have complete control over your state, and your state is creating your reality. So your state of mind, they take you from, you know, the physiology behind why you feel the way you feel, nutritionally, like it's the whole thing. But the very first night, they talk about getting yourself into state. So you work from the morning until about midnight on taking yourself into this low, sad, angry, frustrated state, and then shifting yourself, shifting your physiology, changing the state of mind you're in. You do it over and over and over again until you realize, like, I really do have control over how I'm feeling right now. Like, it is a choice. Like, you don't know that until someone shows you. You don't know that until you have the experience of actually doing it, because in order for you to walk on the fire and not get burnt, you have to be in a completely different brainwave. The moment you get scared, the moment you um, start to worry about things, you do get burnt. The coals are very hot. They are stoked from the moment you are lining up to get into that event all the way until that night. They are burning hot. I've done it twice. Actually, the second time I actually did get blisters from it.
Mm.
The first time I didn't, but I know the second time why. I came out of state because I realized you have a fire buddy that you walk with, and they help keep you in that state. So like there's 17,000 people chanting. It's like kind of wild. Chanting out into
Wow.
the evening with no shoes on. And, and you're saying a certain thing, and the whole collective of the people are keeping you in the space. And when you walk across the fire, you have to walk slow. You can't run. And it's long. It's not like 2 feet. It is like you are walking on the coals for a very long time, and it's hot. You can feel that it's hot, but if you stay in state, like your body doesn't respond to it that way.
Wow.
So from that whole weekend, I started to realize that I had way more control over my experience, and I was just staying in such a place of I'm such a victim. I'm not good enough. I was cheated on. I was like, all these things happen, and I suck. And but it allowed me to stay like small, allowed me to stay disconnected, which at that time felt safer. So going through that process of, oh, I went to this event, I went by myself. It was never something I would do. I bought the expensive ticket, so I'd sit up front and I'd have to stay engaged. And I think after that weekend, I started to see things very differently. Um, Master Co is someone who does energy work, and he was there, and I had never had that experience either. So from being there and experiencing this thing, that I went to a training with him, it's pranic healing, which was wild.
Mm.
And then from there, I had been going to an actual therapist, and it was sort of like, this is great, but I didn't feel like me retelling the story of how things are was actually helping me, where it felt like good to be able to say it out loud, like, but how is this creating forward momentum for me? And when I was sharing that with someone, my friend Jen was like, "Oh, you need to go have a theta session, with Rochelle." And I had one session with her, and I was like, "Sold." I don't know what just happened, but yes, and that's sort of when I spilled over into getting certified and starting to explore other things. But I started to realize while I was doing that, that the connection that I had with my horses and my clients' horses started to evolve, and how I realized my entire experience started to evolve, like how what I was calling in. And then for a long time, it was tricky for me to go, I have to stay as a horse trainer because I need to pay bills, but also doesn't feel right. So what do I do? So it took me like 2 years before I was like, okay, I'm not doing this anymore. Um, and I did explore a lot of other things, with EAGALA, working out in the arena, letting the horses guide the sessions was a different experience for me. And then also working side by side with a psychologist during those sessions. Like my role was just to be the equine specialist. So I stayed focused on the horse, made sure things were safe, that kind of stuff. But I learned a lot from listening to her and, and watching people and watching the horses interact with the people. But I always told her, like, I want to do this, but not like this. And this doesn't, there's too many rules. Like, I don't want to do it like this. I don't know what it looks like, but I don't want to do it like this. And so I think the first thing that I started doing was I started experimenting with my clients here with the mirror and the stall sessions where, you know, in the beginning it was like, okay, let's just throw the horses in the arena. We're going to sit in chairs. We'll journal. All this stuff I sort of picked up from my own experiences with, Tony Robbins stuff, or I did get certified for coaching people, through them. So I learned, but I feel like I did that certification and I came out of it like still not knowing what the heck. Like it still felt there were so many things I needed to work through, like my desire and my discomfort about making people uncomfortable was really going to block me from coaching people because that is what you're doing basically. So I went through life like I don't want to make anyone uncomfortable. I don't want to say anything that's going to make people uncomfortable. Like I don't like, I don't want people to think they're making me uncomfortable. Like I avoided all of that, which was for what I'm doing now. It was like that was going to be impossible. So it just mutated from I have these training clients and they knew I was doing all of this stuff and they're like, you feel different. And I started recognizing belief systems they had when they would come out for lessons. Like, well, I would hear the patterns in what they say. So what I recognized I was really good at was listening to someone from a coaching standpoint, hearing the patterns and the things that they were saying, and then finding the beliefs that were creating those patterns and then asking them the right questions for them to come to the conclusion of, oh, wait a minute, this is how this is affecting my writing, affecting my life, affecting these things. So I just pulled my regular training clients in. Thank God I had very open-minded clients. And in the beginning, I couldn't even guide meditations. I would just find a meditation, on
Mm.
YouTube, and then we would all sit out there with the speaker. And then eventually, from me just doing that enough and meditating enough, I was like, I'm just gonna go for it. And it just grew, it just turned into, if I take your horse in training, you must be there. Here are the guidelines that if you don't like it, it's fine. I don't want to do it. Because I just started only doing things that felt good to me. And so eventually the training horses kind of just petered out because I didn't love it. And I felt like I was spending so much time with other people's horses that I wasn't getting to hang out with mine. And I was like, no, I don't want to do this anymore.
I know that.
Yeah, how do I do
Know
this
that feeling.
different so that I can ride my own freaking horses
Mm.
and be impactful? And I knew there's enough trainers out there that are, you have Warwick Schiller, who I feel like is a different bridge from
Mm.
very much like training, going to the Olympics, doing the things, and then now shifting into, well, there's a way to do horsemanship very mindfully. But then there's like the level after where I think people get bridged from him to like our events,
Mhm.
where you're going just a little bit farther, maybe a little bit more. Maybe
Sure.
we don't have shoes on in the arena sometimes. And like,
Right. Yeah.
it's like everyone has their place in this expansion. And I feel like for me, it felt like there was enough trainers out there coming from him or coming from wherever that are open to hearing it, where if I can work with them, then they can take that back to their training business and their training and their clients. And that's where the expansion is bigger for me. So that's why I think it felt like the natural progression was I was just hardcore trainer, and then all of these things started to happen, and it just plopped me into like where I am right now.
Can you explain to the audience listening what somatic breath work is and what theta healing is for people who aren't familiar with it?
Yeah, so theta is a brainwave, and there are some ways that you can take people into theta. Theta is the brainwave that is before you fall asleep. It's your access to your subconscious. It's your gateway into that space where your analytical mind can shut down. And when you take someone into there by doing the journeys that I do, which are apparently that's a Carl Jung. I didn't even know that until recently, actually. Active imagination is the journeys that I do.
Mhm.
And what you do, you can take, so I've combined a few things. There is a process you can take people in to get them into that thing of brain. It's kind of like a hypnosis. And when you ask questions from that place, people will answer, not from their thinking mind, the one that says that doesn't make sense, to, your higher self, the stuff that is deeply embedded in you, that is your truth, not what you think people want to hear. And when you're in that brainwave, you'll say things that you are like, I think my first experience with that was my very first theta session. The first thing she asked me was, and she would muscle test, and she was like, "Are you human?" And my muscle testing was no. And I was like, this is weird. Like, what do you mean? Why would I not think I'm a human? Like, what was that? Like, this is weird. And it was just because I was so disconnected from humans that I didn't even identify as a human. I was like, no, well, the animals in me, we got it worked out. We know what we're doing over here. And so things like that will come out in the sessions where people are like, why did I say that? I'm like, because there's truth around it. So theta is just this process where you could take people into a brainwave, whether it's just a talk session or a journey, and you let people find what those belief systems are that are creating scenarios in their life. And then you can unwind them, those limiting beliefs, and I believe it's more impactful than regular talk therapy. I mean, there's a time and place for everything, and I don't knock talk therapy at all. Um, but it feels like it gives the power back to the person because you're finding it, and then the questions are being answered by you. And oftentimes, when those certain things are identified and acknowledged, the entire experience gets to unwind. Like, my belief is that you'll have these lessons, these patterns of relationships, these things that happen in your life over and over and over again, because it is there for you to poke these things that need healing, whether it's ancestral, whether it's from childhood, whether it's from whatever it is, until you look at it. And some people never do. And if you're drinking to numb it, or you know, if you're whatever your choice of suffering that you choose is, you separate yourself from it, and you'll have to continue to have those lessons. But when you get into it and you start to recognize, like, this is my work to do, I have to figure this out, or this is going to continue to happen. It's really about getting curious and asking the right questions. Sometimes you need someone else to ask you the questions. I still do theta sessions with Rochelle. I can do it a bit for myself, but once you start to learn that when you have this big emotional response in your body, there's something there for you, and you're taught at a young age to avoid discomfort. If you're crying, it's like, what's wrong? How do we stop it? Or if you're having these big emotions, typically we're shut down when we're young, like calm down, like be quiet. There's all these that you're just taught by your parents, caregivers, that's what, so when you grow up and you have these responses, your first initial response is, this doesn't feel good to me. How do I get rid of it? When really you should be like, this doesn't feel good. What the fuck is it about? Like, what is it trying to tell me right now? What do I need to know right now? What am I not acknowledging for myself? Like, what is the lesson? What is it? What is it? And you can journal, you can do a theta session, you can do the journeys, whatever. And those answers will usually come up. After that, you kind of you go into the process of, okay, now that I understand that, I can accept it as part of me, not as something to get rid of, but oh, this is why this is here. What can I do about it to integrate that? Like, what decision do I make differently after this now? And those lessons stop coming. That is how you quote unquote fix the fix that I was looking for. And they don't stop coming. I feel like you can have different layers unwound through the process, because I also think people will think, well, the healing journey is you get to a certain point and then nothing's wrong and you live your life and you're great and you're happy. But I think we chose the human experience to have all of these different things. And so it's not that the lessons stop, but your resilience grows and it doesn't knock you down. You recognize, oh, wait, I got to figure something else out here. So you don't go into suffering. You don't go into, oh my gosh, this is it. This is never ending. My life sucks. This is just where I'm at. It's like you get curious. And so I think as a whole, you get to do life and not be sucked into like this. I used to feel like I was in like a pit. Like I was like, this is just what life is. And there's sprinkled with these cool experiences, these people that I love, or I went and did this fun thing, but when I went back to real life, it was like back into the pit, and I don't have that anymore. So I think
Mm.
theta for me, that's what that was. So it's basically a brainwave. You access your subconscious. Your body is really your subconscious mind. So when you bring in the somatic piece, the breathwork piece, which was another piece to the puzzle for me, learning that, and this helped with my horse training actually, because with horses in their bodies, this was what was happening. And I didn't realize it until I think my first understanding was I was listening to a Dr. Joe Dispenza podcast, and he started talking about the nervous system. And I was like, oh, hold on. Like, wait. Like, it's so ridiculous because it's not something that's new, right? And I don't know why I'd never seen anything about it until whenever it was that I kind of 2019, I think, was when I heard that, and I was like, holy shit, like we're basically intentionally, like the formula that we use for horse training and natural horsemanship or whatever we want to call it is basically inputting trauma into their bodies. We are holding them into a place. If the horse doesn't understand, we're taking them into this heightened fight or flight state until they shut down, whatever level shutdown looks like, or softening or giving, and then we release. So we're teaching them, can you please go to shutdown? Great. Good job. And then we wonder why the horses are going lame and how having all these issues. And it was like that moment that kind of snapped me into, holy crap, like the body is so important as well. So I don't, my first experience with breath work, what was my first experience with breath work? I think it was a session that I did at a yoga studio, microdosing breath work. And so she gives you tea, and you microdose psilocybin, and she takes you on a whole freaking journey. Like, she has instruments there, she has didgeridoos, she's great. She sings, there is all the things there, and there's this huge groups of people come, people that have never done anything like this before, but it was my first experience with breath work, and I had so much healing come from that. And I was like, what? Like, just happened. I don't even know what happened. I wasn't really there, but I was there, but I know that I am different. And so when I started doing research, after also a good friend of mine, Sandy Vreeberg, she's one of the trainers for the Masterson method. We were kind of on this like little journey together, and they're just doing all body work. And she's like, you need to read Peter Levine's work. She's like, let's read the book together, not together, together. And I was like, okay. And then his somatic experiencing, and I was like, oh, so I was like, do they combine breathwork and somatic stuff? And then I found the somatic release
Mm.
modality, and they do the breathwork with you in a way where you start out, in a regulated state, just grounding, and then you take the person with breath into a breath that brings up intentionally the fight or flight, and you do it in a way, and you guide them to release it through the body. So basically what happens is, if you have an experience that's the emotions are really heightened, and you are in fight or flight, and you're restrained in any way, either physically or I'd say energetically and emotionally, like you feel like you can't say what you need to say, you can't run away, you can't fight. If any of those things have happened, that will remain running in your body until it is acknowledged and released. And so with Peter Levine's work, it's very much slow, intentional. He doesn't have a lot of videos on YouTube. He has a very old one on YouTube with a veteran that had a TBI, and he had PTSD from being in war, and he had what they were labeling as Tourette's. And he had these certain twitches, and it was so wild to watch. I'll have to find the link for you. Is he realized when he would have his twitch, his arm would do a certain movement, and I think it was like up. And so he started to ask him, go right to the point and then tell me what, what's happening here. What does it feel like? And what he realized what had happened is a bomb had gone off. And his arm would go up, and he recognized, oh, this was him blocking himself from the shards of metal. And he took him through a process within that movement. And whether it's punching, kicking, running, I've had people just take off running in the arena and released stuff in their calves. They were having things where they would wake up every night with such bad leg cramps from a trauma they had. They needed to run and they didn't. And it wasn't like we had to go to the experience. It was like I guided them to this place and I said, just do whatever your body wants to do right now. And actually, her and her husband weren't even looking at each other, and they both ran, which is what they needed to do at the time. And so it all kind of came full circle, where if you take someone into that space and you allow their body to kick, to scream, to flail around, to move out, you can release a lot of that stuff that is running in there without taking them back into the traumatic experience.
Mm.
So the somatic piece is that it's releasing the stuff that's in the body, and you activate it through the breath, and then you re-regulate people back down through their breath. So I thought, what better combination to take people into a theta state and also then use the breath work and the somatic piece,
Yeah.
and then the active imagination, like, can we smash it all together with the horses and without the horses? And it turns out you can. So I think the combination of all of the things that I did, I just remained guided, and that's how it kind of all evolved.
Well, and I know we're kind of like dove in really deep here for people that maybe aren't familiar with all this, but to tie it back into the reason all this is important, I guess, is because a lot of us are carrying traumas. Like that's a big part of my last year and a half with you and Shaylee has been healing my own trauma, my own personal trauma.
Mhm.
But that we need to do that deeper work so that we can have a more authentic relationship with our horse. Or why would you describe that, us diving into our deeper shadows, if you will? You can talk about the shadow work too. I mean, why that's important when we're looking at trying to create a better relationship with our horse, or how that helps people with their fears and anxieties just when they're with their horse.
Mhm. Yeah, I think the common misconception with horses is that you need to like fake it till you make it, or act calm or act relaxed. And really, what they want you to do is show up authentically. The misalignment that they feel when you are like, I'm fine, I'm great, is what they want to move away from. And that's something that I've witnessed many times in sessions where horses are loose and they're guiding the sessions. And I think people to people relationships, you can feel that, like when someone says, yeah, I'm fine, or hey, how are you doing? And there's something off. Um, that immediately becomes something that feels unsafe. And so I think humans are hardwired for connection. They want to connect with other people, which typically most of our experiences are that people are not safe. And I think that's why horse people gravitate towards horses a lot of the times. But then you start to gravitate towards them, and you don't get to have the experience that you hope for, because that same energy is still running. So the benefit of doing that work is that you're able to just show up wherever you're at authentically and not worry about whether or not you're going to be accepted or not. And because of that, you're calling the right people that accept you for who you are. And then you get to live like this without all the masks. It's like you have to put so much energy into showing up like how you think people want you to show up. And you're never really fully living in that way. You're never really fully connecting with other people or the horses. So the horses are sort of the safe place for you to experiment with that with. It feels safer to people most of the time to experiment with that, where, okay, I can show up really authentically and tell you, I'm actually really nervous right now. I'm actually scared right now. I'm really insecure. And you get to watch the horses just totally let down when you just come to terms with where I'm at right now. The
Mhm.
shadow work is the first piece of just becoming aware of, oh, I feel this emotional response, whether it's fear, whether it's anger, whether it's resentment, whatever it is, I feel it. And then going into the work of, ooh, what is this about? Instead of trying to get rid of it and reject it, it's like, oh, this is fascinating. When's the first time that I really felt this way? And when you get curious about that, it's like, oh, I remember this experience of, this time at school where somebody said this thing to me and I've just held on to it, or whatever it is. Everyone has a story. And you can go, oh, so now I understand. I understand why I would feel this way, because that was really hard. I understand it. It's not anything to get rid of or be ashamed of. It's like, this is just the experiences we're all having as humans. The under the understanding piece and the not rejecting. I think people, I want to let this go. I want to get rid of this. I don't like that I'm angry. I don't like that. You're just in that moment rejecting another part of yourself. You're a part of your story. You're rejecting which is only just more self-rejection. So the key is understanding why I feel this way and then saying, of course I feel this way. That sucked. That shouldn't have happened to somebody. And then you can mix in the inner child work where, I'll do that in journey sometimes, where you as an adult standing in front of that version of yourself that needed something that you didn't get. What did that person need? What did that version of you need to hear? And in that acknowledgement, you can close so many of those loops as far as healing is concerned. And then when you go into the understanding, the acceptance, and then it's like the integration is, I don't actually have to live from that place anymore. That did happen to me at that age. I understand why I've been living that way, but I actually don't have to live that way anymore. That's not happening anymore. Because you're an adult, you can use your oh, hold on. I don't have to do that anymore. And so that's kind of shadow work wrapped up into like a little package. But that is the process. And you can actually, I feel like my life is lived that way. It may take me a long time sometimes to figure shit out. Where I'm like, this is a thing and I can't figure it out. Like, what is it? What is it? But again, the benefit of having a lot of resources, like the sessions that I can do with my Theta person, or, Denise, my astrologist friend, very intuitive. I have several very high level coach friends that, there was a situation as of late that I was like, I cannot figure this out and I cannot figure it out. I'm stuck, I'm stuck, I'm stuck. And she asked me one question and I was like, oh shit. And it unlocked it and off we went. So the shadow work is that it's this way of living. And it's just a constant process of becoming aware and curious and then accepting. So the more you can accept yourself and your story and your experience, the more authentic you can be, then the deeper the connections you can have. And the people that you call in, the horses you call in, when you're like that, from an energetic standpoint, they're all people that love that version of you. So you no longer have to be in a space where you're pretending to be something you're not. And it's like freedom. Like that's all we're really looking for. Like freedom from the constraints of, the things you put on yourself. This is the way I need to be, or people will not. Those belief systems that are creating your reality. And I think when you're talking about manifesting, you're talking about communication, you're talking about any of this healing work or whatever, it all boils down to, we are all craving and we're hardwired for connection. And when we don't have it, you know, what else is there? There is no better experience than being fully connected with someone or something in front of you. And I know that because I watch people want that. And people will list off a bunch of things that they think they want. But at the end of the day, it all boils down to, I just want to feel accepted and loved and safe and connected to the people and things around me. And that is the way to do it. So
Do you feel like when people do the inner work themselves, then that helps the horse feel more safe?
yeah, I think because if you're being allowed, if you're allowing yourself to be authentic, if you're creating those boundaries, then immediately the people around you feel safe to do the same thing, horses and humans. So if you are not there, then no one else can be there around you. That's just the bottom line. They can be at the level that you're at. And I think when horses feel that, it's like they get to then feel safe to express. When you're not dysregulated, then they don't have to be on guard. And it was a very interesting situation, speaking of like relationships and co-regulating nervous systems, where whose nervous system is going to win. Like, who's going to get dysregulated faster. And I think my superpower for a while with just horses, not humans I'm definitely still working on, not humans, client humans I'm really good at, but personal relationships is way harder for me. And my people pleasing tendencies and my all fawning all day. We talk about trauma responses. I didn't even know fawning was a thing. Like fight or flight, freeze. I was like, yeah, definitely probably freeze. I get quiet. But my ability to fawn is like hardcore. So I was like, oh God. And I deal with that in my relationship that I'm in now. And I think that it's your ability to create boundaries gives people around you permission to create boundaries, which feels safe. Your ability to stay regulated when things get chaotic around you can help and support people re-regulate back down and feel safe to like, "Oh, okay." Um, so that piece of, yeah, your horses get to feel immediately safer because they know you show up and you're just like you are. You can be upset and angry and know you're there and still stay regulated, and or you regulate back down faster because you're aware of what's going on. So then you go into that curiosity. So it's like you can show up and you're like, I am so anxious. And the horses are like, great. How can I help you? How can I be of service to you? If you show up and you're like, I'm fine, I'm great. The horses are like, you are not fine. And you don't even know you're not fine. So please move
Wow.
away from me. And I watch it happen actually within the herd. And I have this video, it's like 20 minutes long. And I'm always taking guidance from my horse Smarty, who I'm like, this horse has it all. And actually, so many things. I watch him. He's a horse that I know how to work the horses that would come into training. So the most recent horses that I had in training, there was this mare. She was very anxious. She was dysregulated. She, wanted to be with the herd so bad. And I think about attachment and stuff within humans and how we show up in relationship and how it so correlates with the horses with each other out there. And having a dysregulated herd member is survival for horses. They don't want that because that can affect whether or not they're going to live or die strictly because predators are coming. You have one horse that's like, there's predators everywhere all the time. Like that is not for the collective herd helping, and they don't want that. And so I worked with this mare for a long enough time, and I ended up putting her out there, and I watched him push her out of the herd and stop her. And it was interesting because when she would regulate because somatically she was able to run. She ran, released somatically stuff, and then would pause. And you would watch her start to re-regulate, and he would watch her. And he was keeping her away from the herd. Like the herd, and they're pretty chill. So they were just minding their business. They were unaffected by any of this. And that's why I put horses with them, because I know they can handle this. And so they would just, get out of the way and go back to eating. And the moment she would see her go back into a panic, he would run straight at her, push her out, and then she would stop and re-regulate. And it was this process went on. And so finally she just, wherever she was, she knew I'm actually okay on my own. Like all of this was clear. It's like when you have a good cry or a really good breathwork session where you've screamed and cried and all things like that. You come out after and you're like, oh shit, it feels so much better. It was like that's what I was watching happen. And when she finally just like relaxed and she was like, wait a minute, then all of a sudden he went over there. They mutually groomed, shook it off. They both rolled, and then she was in the herd, and that was it. And that was the end of it. She never had any social separation anxiety after that. Like I watched that happen, and I was like, how do I recreate that for them? And the stuff that I do in the round pen with horses is not traditional round pen work, but it is like this, how can I pop this bubble that you've got going and then let you regulate? How can I pop it and regulate? It's like you almost need to remind them that they do have the ability to regulate themselves
Mm.
back down. And I think when horses are trained the way they're trained, that stuff, their natural instincts to be able to do that get shut down because they get into such a trauma response, they stay stuck there. And I think it's the same thing with people. So, you know, um, that piece, uh,
You call the
is
round
heavily
pen
connected.
expression sessions? Is that what you
Yeah.
call it? Instead of traditional round penning?
Yeah. The question that I ask of each horse and actually people when I bring them in to a session is does this horse need to know it's safe to be still, or does it need to know it's safe to move? And I think that's just identifying, is this horse shut down, and stuck in freeze, or I don't get, I want to say quote unquote normal horses that just need little things. Like I get horses that are like, we don't know what to do. And or I identify as this horse stuck in like fight or flight, are they running? Are they coming at me in the round pen? And typically I'll just go into the round pen and I'll talk to the owner and let the horse just cruise around. And I've watched the pattern of the horse and I watch and listen to the pattern of what the human is saying. It's almost like couples therapy. And I can identify, usually the two will correlate. And so the mirror and the stall thing comes from this place of it's not that the horse is doing or being what you are. And I think that's a misconception. People get really protective. The horse is not your mirror. And I'm like, everything is your mirror. It doesn't mean the horse is the things. It means your perception of what
Mhm.
you're seeing is
It's your
that's the mirror,
perception.
right?
Yeah.
It's your
Yeah.
perception. It's the lens you see the world through. It doesn't mean anything to do with the horse. Whatever the horse does or the person, your partner, your whatever does, you're going to take a certain way because that is your lens, your perception. So when I listen to the person talk about their story, talk about the story about the horse, and then I watch the horse and I see if the two are actually correlating, and I can bring that stuff up. But just like I take people through the breath work into the fight or flight to let that clear, I can do it with the horses.
Mhm.
The reason I can do it is because I can stay neutral. I don't have a story. I don't have an outcome. I can stay incredibly neutral through it. And so the horse gets to have that experience. The problem is if you try to teach that to somebody and they already have a story and they haven't done enough work to stay neutral when the horse is way up here or the person is way up here, then you just create more problems. And then there is more fear, and then there's more flight, and there is more fight. So it's not something I've even figured out how to teach somebody to do, but it is just what I do. So I can pop the bubble and then I sit in neutral and I wait. The horse gets to experience, and the people, this heightened state of all of these emotions happening with someone who is not going with them, staying regulated. So they get to clear all of this stuff and have no repercussions. They're not in trouble for it. They're not, even when they, me and Celeste have sort of talked about is, um, and I know Tara too, where if you're in the training space and you understand it, it's like sometimes the horses are biting at you and sometimes you're just getting out of the way. But for you to be able to stay out of fear, out of frustration, out of all of the things while that's happening, it's not, I don't know if it's something you can teach somebody, but it
Mhm.
is the expression that needs to come out for those trauma loops to close. And
Mhm.
so I think the success that I have had with those horses is because of my ability to do that. Well, the person gets to witness it, and they get to witness me not getting upset and me not being bought into the story and me separating it from them. And they start to understand, oh, that's how I feel. It doesn't mean it's the same experience as the horse, but the person will correlate it back to them. And then they can start to unwind stuff on the outside of the round pen while I'm working the horse on the inside. So the expression
Yeah.
sessions is I'm just letting the horse express. If it wants to run and run and run, I'll step in, pattern interrupt, just send them the other way, pattern interrupt, send them. But you have to stay neutral and not be afraid to get right in front of them, which a lot of people are like, I'm not going to jump in front of that animal who is clearly not in its right mind and running fearfully. I'm like, you just do it. You just
I think
know that it's going to be okay. And they feel like, what? I'm like, so in that turn, it's like you're pattern interrupting. You don't have to run. You can run. You don't have to run. But there's this moment in between as they change directions where they will look at you for a split second. If you stay completely grounded and regulated, they feel it. And those moments in between get longer and longer. And then pretty soon they're like, oh shit, I feel so much better. And then it's like, it's safe to be still. It's safe to be in stillness where maybe they were, in a space in the beginning of their training where they wanted to get sticky and they got reprimanded for it. So then all of a sudden it was, I run, and that's what keeps me alive. I just keep running. I just keep running. And, and so, and so that's how you get them unstuck in that way and break that pattern where the horses are just locked up and, you pop the bubble, you know, a lot of times the forward movement will come from, it'll come more naturally because I'm not keeping them in that story. So any little movement they have, and I'll create energy in the middle and they're like, oh God. And it kind of like pops a little bit of the layer off. And they're like, oh, and they moved and like, oh, that kind of felt good. And then pretty soon they are full out. There's a moment that happens where the bubble is popped and they're kicking and they're, sometimes they're coming at you. It's not without boundaries also. So my rules with those horses in those moments is this is my circle. You get to tell me whatever you want to tell me, and as long as it's away from me. If they come at me, I'm like, absolutely not. You're doing that over there. You can bite and kick and whatever you need to do on the outside of my bubble. And so it's when I say that, I don't want people to think I'm just letting horses run at me and bite me. It's like, nope, there's a boundary. But the boundary, when it is set, is not with anger or frustration. It's like, no, no, this is my boundary. This is care for
It's
myself.
neutral
Yeah. And
boundary.
so I think that's why those sessions become impactful for the horse because they get to learn, oh, hold on, I can still go express myself. I'm not going to get in trouble. And also there's someone here in this space that is regulated enough to not let me just mow them over. So I think that's why those sessions are really healing for the horses.
And
Which one
just
was
listening to you talk, and I relate to that because I have some horses that are like that, and that I'm so solid and neutral, then they don't get in, like they're so afraid of getting in trouble because they've gotten in trouble in the past. And when they realize that I'm not, that I'm just letting them get it out, like I'm just letting them somatically work it through, and then they start to trust me more when they realize that I'm not upset that they did
mm-hmm,
it. I'm just letting them do it. But I think just listening to you talk, I think is a great example of, like, I'm able to do that because I have a lot of experience. You're able to do that because you have a lot of experience. I have a lot of clients, though, that wouldn't necessarily be in that place. But doing this inner work on your own stuff, I think, is like the first step to trying to help people
mm-hmm,
get to that space where they can be more neutral and not be reactive or fearful or feeling like they either are afraid and running away or feeling like they have to get more powerful that would be aggressive, let's say.
mm-hmm.
Um, so anyway, I think it's cool just for people to listen to you explain it. Um, I guess my next question is, since you and Shaylee work together so closely, how has that affected just everything that you do with horses when you have like your best
Mhm.
friend's an animal communicator?
I feel like in the beginning it was just a lot of confirmation.
Mm,
I even feel like in the well, I have a really good friend, Nikki, who's great. She's a animal communicator. She was my first experience of even being around someone that did that, and she actually really helped me through my divorce. Not,
mm,
I realized when I would have sessions with her, it turned into she started pulling cards for me and was like, you know, and so and everything she said resonated so much. And then she would also let me know, and also Smarty is wanting you to know this, or so she would tell me things from my horses, but it was like me working on my own stuff. And when I met Shaylee, it was like there had been several very Dr. Doolittle moments before I met her, where I was like, oh, I have these like weird stories, and it was just really loud. And I ended up, well, one horse held me very accountable, and it was a horse that I was working out in the round pen. It was trailer loading, and her owner was just such a good guy, and she he was an assistant for one of the trainers that I worked a lot of their clients' horses. It was a 3-day barn, and they had all these shows to get to. And the source was like, I'm not getting in the trailer. So I did a few sessions out there, and one session he had to go back up and help the trainer tack up horses and stuff. He's like, can I just leave you with her? The trailer's hooked up. I was like, yeah, sure. So I was doing some body work on her, um, which was horse taught. I actually I'm a massage therapist, certified massage therapist for humans. That happened years ago. And so I think there's a part of my hands that have their own internal guidance system. And so I was doing a little bit of groundwork mixed with body work that I started to which now it turns out it's very similar to the nerve release work. Who
mm,
knows? It was just all happening. And she very clearly was like, I hate my bit. And I was like, I'm down there by myself. And I'm like, that is so random. Like, what? And and I was like thinking about Nikki, and I was like, oh, do you think that, I'm like texting her like I'm imagining shit, I'm losing my mind. I don't know, maybe it's like the autoimmune stuff like catching up to my brain, like something. And she's like, just listen to her. And I was like, okay, fine. And so I was like, oh, I'm just gonna have this conversation with this horse. So I take her up to the trailer. She just gets right on the trailer. I'd worked her a couple times. There was always hesitation. And today she just got right on. And I was like, and she's like, I hate my bit. And it wasn't the bit itself. She's like, I like the bit that it is, but the material that it's made of is different, and I don't like it. And I
mm,
want it in it's the bit that my old owner used to ride me in. And I was like, okay, great. Like, oh no, okay, I'm not gonna like whatever. I'm here to teach you how to get in the trailer, like, and be comfortable in here. Like, let's just stick to the plan, And so I get her in like 5 or 6 times, and finally I text her owner, and I'm like, okay, like she's been really good today. I don't know, something just clicked. Why don't you come down here? You have to be the one loading her, so you should be doing this. So he comes down, and she gets 2 feet on the ramp and like will not get on. And she looks at me and she's like, well, prior to that, she said, you have to tell my owner. And I was like, sure, I'll tell your owner at this 3-day barn that your horse told me. Like, what? Like, sure, whatever. So, I calm down. She gets 2 feet on the ramp and won't get in. And she backs up and looks at me, and I'm like, fuck. She's like, you promised me. And I was like, you got to be freaking kidding me right now. Like, well, like, I am going to be labeled as the crazy horse trainer that comes here talking about, like, and I was like, oh, so I avoided it for, another 5 minutes, and she was not getting on at all. And he was like, I don't understand what I'm doing wrong. And I was like, and I actually have a picture of him that day. And I had talked to him after that and got more confirmation around it. But he was standing at the escape door and she had her feet on the ramp. And I'm at the back of the trailer. And he's like, I don't know what I'm doing wrong. And I just looked at him. I was like, is the bit that you use, because he had just gotten her not that long before that. And I was like, is the bit that you use, is it different from the old owner? And he was like, it's the same bit, not the same exact bit, but it's the same type of bit. And I was like, is the material that it's made of different? And he was like, well, yeah, I think so. I don't know. I'm not sure. And I was like, it is. She wants the other one. Do you promise to get it for her? And he was like, thank God. He was younger, and so he didn't look at me sideways. He was like, okay. And she literally got right on the trailer. Like the moment he said, yeah, I promise, she got on. He never had a trailer loading issue with her after that. Switched vets. And the 3-day peeps have this big show they go out to back east. And he said he was there, and it was funny because there was an animal communicator walking around the show, and then she had also talked about the bit, and he was like, total confirmation. I felt like I needed to find you and tell you because I knew that you thought you were crazy that day. So my experience with it, being friends with an animal communicator that I could text and be like, what the hell's going on, was that until, then there's Shaylee, where when we started the podcast, it was interesting because I think I then realized in that moment that an animal communicator or any person can only tell you about what their knowledge is limited to. So
Yes.
animal communicators in general can be good communicators, but if they don't have knowledge about the body or they don't have knowledge about anything beyond that, they can be really good at the superficial things. Like, I really love, your horse really loves the purple halter, or, easy things. But the cool thing about Shaylee is that she delves so much into the body, and she's so knowledgeable about all of these different things, where she can go right into, it's this muscle, it's this tendon, it's this part of the digestive system. And it was like, my brain was like, holy crap, like there's so much more to that than just that superficial piece that I thought of horse trainer or horse communicators before that. And so being able to have conversations with her, figure stuff out. Like there were a couple times where we were like private investigating. There was one thing, he kept showing her the bottle, and I was like, I don't even know what that is. Like, and finally we figured out it was penticin. I was thinking essential oils, and she's like essential oils, and it has a green lid. And I was like researching all of these things with green lids, and finally I was like, oh gosh, before you pop the plastic off the penticin, it's green. And he was asking for it because it made his body feel better.
Wow.
So it was like these fun things that I got to do, right? Because she's my friend, and my horses know about her. So if I'm not figuring something out, they will bust in middle of her meditations. Flirt, actually, especially. She's like texted me. I think at one point we had a batch of hay that wasn't bad, but it just was kind of like, it didn't smell good. It didn't smell bad. It just sucked. And she had said she was in the middle of a session, and Flirt popped in and was like, hey, by the way, my hay bag is ruining my life. It's so dramatic. And so she texts me, she's like, Flirt says his hay net is ruining his life. And I was like, what? And she's like, I hates whatever is happening with his hay net. And I was like, his hay net's not different. And I realized, oh, it's this hay that I had been questioning for,
Mhm.
like, we had so much of it. And I was like, well, it doesn't stink, but it doesn't smell good. I don't know. Fine. It's probably fine. They're eating it. And she was like, he very much wants you to get rid of it. And so stuff like that is kind of funny. Like, if I'm not figuring things out, like my horses know they can go to Shaylee and then she will tell me. Um, I think I took her communication course, which was really cool because for me, I'm always like, she's the communicator. Like, that's her job. I'm fully confident. I connect with different energies, non-physical and physical, in our tandem sessions. Like people's loved ones that are non-physical will come through. I don't doubt any of that. It's just not what I do. If it comes up, I'll say it. I'm not
Mhm.
gonna have animal communication sessions. So for me, I'm like, yeah, she's my animal communicator friend. That's
Yeah.
her thing, not mine. But when I took her class, it was interesting because it was like I just had set the intention to just full out whatever comes up. I'm just gonna let it come up. I'm not gonna second guess it. I don't care. This is a small group, like whatever, I'll let it rip. And we had this really crazy experience where I got something so specific and it was even attached with a scent, and like there
Mm.
was just things that I didn't understand that I was able to do, because afterwards she was like, "Oh, I have to tell you so many things about what you said. You didn't even understand how crazy it is." And so I think for me, the confidence and confirmation comes, from having someone who does that, and she does it so well. And also she's like, "You're also good." And I'm like, "Yeah, okay, whatever." So I think there's that piece that's fun. I know if I ever really need her, that I have her, and I have access to her, so that's fun.
But it's cool. I mean, you are getting intuitively, you're getting messages.
Mhm.
Just, you're not dedicating your whole
Yeah.
career to that the way she is, but you're still
Yeah.
very much using it in what you do.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think that the journeys are all channeled. My meditations are all channeled. It's never anything, it's not any different. Like if I were to connect to an animal the way I connect when I'm gonna channel one of those things, it's the same thing. I
Mhm.
say what I see, in those, and I guide people to where they need to go through those. So if I wanted to say I'm gonna connect with an animal and do the same thing and write down everything I was getting. So
Yeah.
that's what I kind of mean. Like for people in general, it's like everyone has the ability to connect and communicate. It's like, what's your intention? Do you really want to do it? And I know she gets funny about, and I think anyone that's really good at what they do, when people think, well, you're just so intuitive, you must have just been born like that. Well, I think a part of that is true. That girl is freaking dedicated to
Yeah,
meditating
she
and
is.
to doing the thing. Like she's insane. Like she meditated for 5 hours yesterday. And I was like, you're like, do I need to have
Yeah.
an intervention with you? Like, are you okay? But it's why she's so freaking good. So I think people, if you really want to be good at the communication piece, the channeling piece, and I also had someone else reach out to me and she's like, I want to do what you do with those journeys. Like, I want to be able to do that. Like, do you read of a script? Do you come up with it before? I think everyone has their thing. And I'm like, no, it's just channeled, right? It's from meditating. I don't meditate for 5 hours a day. But if I did, well, who knows what would happen? But, and it's the same thing where Shaylee writes down the meditations. You know what I mean? If she doesn't, she goes off into the sticks sometimes, and I we gotta bring her back in. So you just have to remember, like, everyone has their thing. And it's like,
Mhm.
you find it and then you dedicate your time and energy to growing it, and then and that gets to be your stuff. But it's all sort of the same. It's like you clear out all these belief systems about whether or not you can do it, and then you dedicate enough time to clear the channel, and then you figure out what you want that to be focused on. Is it connecting with non-physical, is it connecting with cards, it can be anything. It can be anything you want. Well, we just had Kara Daniels on, and she does the animal communication, but she freaking connects with trees,
I watched
and
that
oh,
episode actually,
it's
yeah.
so freaking good. And I'm like, see, it's all the same thing. None of
Yeah.
it is different. Um,
Well, I met you, I met you a little bit before Elements because I signed up for your mirror in the whatever, mirror master class.
mhm.
And I did the Elements, and then I did my own little deep dive into my own trauma healing, and really like this last year and a half have done everything you and Shaylee have offered, except for I did not go to the Salt River thing. And I didn't go to your event in October, but I did do the online thing.
Mhm.
And I just wanted to say when I first started doing your journeys, in the very beginning, this was very new for me. I didn't know what the hell. I was like, whatever, I'll try it. And I remember I actually did it laying in the bathtub. And then you wanted us to do some movement. I'm like, well, I guess I can't do that in the bathtub, but I'll do it again another time. But in the beginning, I didn't see any images. Like I really was pretty shut down as far as that goes. And then I remember the first time I started to see something, like just anything. And it was actually was really cool. It was a yin and yang symbol where the white part was my horse Ugo and
Mhm.
the dark part was actually my dog, my Cane Corso. And it was just like twirling around in my mind's eye or whatever. And then after that time, then everything started to open up. And then you had done the cave meditation. I think is that your winter wisdom journey or something?
Yeah. Yeah.
I
Yeah.
did that last year, and I had the most profound, beautiful imagery, right? And then I just did it again yesterday, and it was so cool because the images were really the same, only then there were some things that were added, like a little little enhancement on some flowers here or there, whatever. But really, I just wanted to say that, deep diving into this scenario where you and Shaylee are working together has really been the coolest, a very profound healing journey for me to be on, to work through some pretty heavy shit
Hmm.
that I was ignoring for a really long time, and I was functioning. And I feel like I think I've always just had such a pure intention or a pure heart with my horses, that the horses accept me where I was at, even though I still had all this unresolved trauma. But then I did realize later, as I was kind of deep diving into some of the stuff, that there are some things with my mare that I think in how she showed up for me, that I'm really curious to kind of see now, as I start to kind of bring her back into full work, where we'll be at now, because we've kind of just been on this little hiatus really while I've been doing all of my own healing, which I think has been really valuable time spent. And I've just, I've been doing the BTMM, and I've just been doing these meditations, and I've been doing a lot of just really quiet, introspective time with my horses, and really connecting with them on an even deeper level. Like, I always felt connected, but at even deeper level than I was before.
Hmm.
But I just want to encourage the listeners to, yeah, check you guys out, or, reach out to you if they're feeling like they have any underlying, I mean, we all have shit. I mean, all of us have shit. So any underlying things that if they even think it could be affecting their relationship with their horse, encouraging them to really investigate that. I mean, whether it be through you and Amber or you and Shaylee, sorry, you are Amber, whether it be through you and Shaylee, or other healing practitioners. I guess I can't overemphasize enough how important that is for people to not avoid looking inside in their inner stuff. How do you
Yeah.
feel like it's helped you, just your whole process, like where you are now and where you were?
I feel like the piece of people coming to do this work, because sometimes they will do it for their horse before they'll do it for themselves, and they'll do it for their families, or it's like the horses are so significant and important to people that it is what brings them to the healing work. And the most recent thing that I've created was the relationship reset. And because I knew this was kind of the piece that I wanted to ease people into, so that it could be something that was just self-guided, and you could do it at your own pace, and would help with the very beginning phases of the reconnection with self and then to your horse. So you could do it with any discipline or any um, you know, level that they're at, even if they're injured, or on laid up or retired or whatever it is. And I felt like that is my experience. How it's kind of shaped me is that my day-to-day life is more my it's all about your nervous system, man. I'm
Hmm.
just not stressed out anymore. And there are stressful things that happen, and I work through them, but I am not stressed out, like as an as I am existing, because which is how I was living before. Um, and the resilience, your capacity to handle hard things. I can do hard things and still be happy. I can have hard times and still enjoy myself and find joy in that stuff. So it's just freedom. It's freedom to be authentic, freedom to explore things, freedom to fail, freedom to, you know, um, to connect with people, to be brave enough to have vulnerable conversations, relationships with people. I feel like all of that. And I feel like freedom is the word that just keeps coming to mind, because when you're living with all these other things, it's like there's such a constriction on you physically and energetically. You shut everything down. And, when once you start doing this stuff, it's like you start to look around and realize like none of it actually matters. Like all of what people think actually doesn't matter. Like, like it's just then you just get to be exactly who you are. And you'll call in relationships that will ask you and challenge you to be more of who you are. Um, there's a different kind of discomfort that starts to come within that, which is kind of the phase I think I'm in right now. And so it never stops. Like the growth and the expansion never stops. And I think that's one thing that I think individually and, with Shaylee, I think the one thing that we kind of want to get across to people is we are always doing the work. Like, and it
Mhm.
can be fun. It can be uncomfortable in the beginning until you realize the discomfort is just because you have a story about, it's just a belief you have about whether you should or should not be doing it. Does this mean there's something wrong with me? Once that's gone, it's like, no, there's nothing wrong with me. I'm just a human and I'm working this stuff out. And I accept that and it's cool. It'll be fine. On the other side of it, it's gonna be great. So I think that piece of flow that I just get to exist in with the bumps of humanness in between is just
Mhm.
flip-flopped. I get this vision of, like you were saying, the yin and the yang, where it was like before there was no balance, before it was just all hard. Everything was
Yeah.
just hard and stressful. And I think most people are living in that state and they don't recognize it. And I think when you get those small sips of regulated and just really living in a life where you're like, oh, I don't have to be stressed out to be successful. I don't have to strive and struggle for me to have good things happen. Like I can just also be influent and allow those things to come to me. Like also that's an option, like you didn't know. Um, so I think that piece is just like the more you figure it out, the more you can just stay in that flow space and the more it can come. But I don't think the lessons will ever stop. I just think that they become easier to navigate because you're not feeling like it means there's something wrong with you.
Right. Well, I think you do a beautiful job of, yeah, helping guide people back to themselves. Um, do you have like, if you had one piece of advice for the listeners of how they could improve their relationship? I know we've talked about a lot of things, but
Mhm.
if you had just one, if they were going to do just one thing to help improve their relationship and their connection with their horse, what would you tell them to do?
I would say stay curious in all situations. Don't stop asking questions. If you feel a certain way, ask why. If you think they're feeling a certain way, ask why. I think searching down for the foundational things that are making the situation what it is, whether it's a behavioral situation, whether it's some situation you're in personally, if you can get curious about it and never stop asking questions to yourself, about them, about their situation, about your situation, you get to the actual bottom of things instead of having a hardcore set. This is what's happening right now. You can wonder, is it though? Is it actually what's happening? Or is it just a story I have about what's happening? It's perpetuating what's happening, like, because that will
True.
be the most impactful thing you can do for yourself and yours. Stay curious.
Okay. Okay, cool. Well, I really enjoyed having you. Do you have anything else you want to add before I have you go ahead and tell people how to find you or
I don't think so. I think just reminding people that wherever they're at is exactly where they're supposed to be, even if it's hard. And, um, you know, and I think anything that you do with the intention of diving deeper is going to lead you on that path, even if it feels slow or if it feels really small in the beginning. The timing is exactly what it needs to be, and you're only going to get what you can handle. I think people have a misconception about diving into the work being like, oh, what if I see or realize something that I can't take? And I'm like, your brain won't do that to you. It's very smart. It will only give you what you can handle. And so, it's just deeply accepting where you're at in your journey and recognizing that you don't know what you know until you know it, and that's okay too. And anything you're doing moving in that direction is like forward movement. So just to be easy on yourselves.
so true? Well, go ahead and tell people where they can find you. I'll include it in the show notes as well at the end. But if they are interested in checking out your podcast, if they're interested in any of the other offerings that you and Shaylee do together, how do they
Mhm.
find you?
My website has everything. So just
Okay.
amberlydic.com has our tea house stuff on it and our membership.
Thanks, Amber, and thank all of you for joining me for this amazing and deep conversation. Check out Amber's website to find all of her events and experiences, including her latest offer, Manifesting Magic in 2025. I did it last year and cannot wait to do it again. To become a part of the My Magical Horse community, go to www.patreon.com/mymagicalhorse. And if you like this podcast, be sure to like and share. Until next time, namaste, friends.